Brian Colburn is our guest. He's the host of the podcast, My Weekly Mixtape. Let's get into some rock books that you've read that you want to talk about. One is called The Daily Adventures of Mixerman, released in 2009. Tell us what or who this one is about.
This book is written by Mixerman. He is a board op that has recorded a ton of albums, and it could be my favorite satire book based on the music industry. It is based around a true story. Regardless of your level of music knowledge, this book is kind of like the trials and tribulations, if you will, of a bidding war caliber band. And what that means is a lot of labels, if they found a band that was quote unquote catching fire on the live scene, labels would sometimes get into bidding wars to get their hands on the band, offering them more perks, more contracts, blah, blah, blah. Well, this band apparently had all the looks in the world, but zero talent. Then you throw them into a major label recording session with a infamous producer, famous and infamous, and what would appear to be an endless budget, meaning spare no expense. You basically get this recipe for one great story. And what I love about this book is this actually started as a blog back in the early 2000s. So the album recording sessions were happening in 2002. And what this guy would do is every night he would come home, no matter what time he got in, and he would just write about that day. And he would post it on a blog. And he got through about 3/4 of the recording process. And it went from like 200 people looking at the blog to 200,000 people. And people were posting it on music boards and arguing over the decisions made. So he had to keep everybody under wraps, including himself, thus the name Mixerman.
Yeah.
And he was talking about people in the industry and kind of blowing things up from the inside out and exposing a lot of the stuff that happens. But at the same time, he was also talking about things that happen in the studio, signal processing, getting the proper sound on a kick drum, and how long that goes into getting the right drum sound for an album recording, and changing that drum sound, and using items like Pro Tools versus actual analog tape, this is around the time that the industry was making that big switch. So there is some inside baseball stuff, but the guy is such an amazing writer that he explains everything at a layman's level so that anybody can understand what's happening when he talks about signal flow.
Right.
But he knows how to paint the people in this band, and he basically makes them as characters. And the way he describes them is so vivid and so perfect that anybody who's ever been in a band or been around bands can relate to the stories he tells in this book. I laughed in this book probably more times than any book I've ever read, maybe because I enjoy the recording process and music so much, but I think anybody would enjoy this book.
I did read an excerpt, and you're so right. Oh, you're holding it in your hand. One entry talked about him spending 10 hours setting up the studio only to have one of the band members, I think it was one of the band members, who just tore it all down.
Yes.
And he came in the next morning and he's like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And the guy was like, "No, you know what you're doing, man. You could just set it up quickly, you know." And he was ready. He was going to explode on this guy. Well, but let me ask you this. Is this somebody that can we assume that this is somebody that we would recognize if he gave his real name?
I would guess so, but there has never been any confirmation over what this band was. There was ridiculous amounts of speculation back in 2002 of what band it could have been.
But also Mixerman, like he's somebody well known. Like, could he be like Bob
he has
Rock?
other books, but I'm sure I'm sure it's something that could be discovered.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how hidden it is, but I kind of enjoy the facade around everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I want to dig into it because it's just so well written and so fun. You actually, at the end of the blog, he kind of cut it off right towards the end. And he said, all right, because at that point, everybody was like salivating to know what was happening the next day. Then he finished it for the book. As soon as it came out, I grabbed the copy, and I was so happy to see how the story ended. And I will
That
not,
amazing.
no spoilers.